Welcome to the Wellness on Tap podcast with your host, Dr. Debs Eastwood.
So, should we do this, Chris?
Let's do it.
Yay! Good. So, I would like to very much welcome Chris Knight onto my podcast episode today. Welcome, my dear. How are you today?
I'm very well. Well, I'm sort of quite well. I'm highly dosed up on paracetamols, but I'm doing not too bad.
Good. Well, thank you for coming.
No problem. If you sound a little hoarse, you'll know why.
Fair enough. I think we can live with that. Mark might be able to do a little bit of tweaking. You never know.
Yeah,
He's good at that sort of thing. So I asked you on here because I'm fascinated by what you do and why it is that you do it, because you certainly didn't start out, and part of your life still isn't the health and hypnotherapy side of things. So where do you think is the best place to start?
What I do and why did I do it? Why I do it? I think it stems back quite a few years. And actually probably stems back to stage hypnosis, believe it or not. And I was chatting earlier on how I've been in bands when I was growing up into my teens. And we actually fronted we opened a show for a hypnotist on stage. And you know when you're just fascinated by something? And I must have been 20, and I'm just sat there thinking, is this real? Is he doing this? You know, are these people like stooges? What's going off? And because we were working the show with him, I got to talk with him backstage, and he's called Chris Caress, and he's still going now. He's massively famous in the hypnosis world. He's doing really well. And I had like a 10-second conversation with him about hypnosis, like really brief. And he's just like, I need to do this. I need to look into it. But obviously, back when you're 20, I was traveling the world in a band, and I wasn't bothered about anything, and life gets in the way, and I forgot all about it. But I always wanted to be a doctor through my teens, going to university, to study medicine. And I ended up joining a band instead. So it was doctor or band. I'm thinking, I thought I made the right choice here.
Made an interesting choice,
yeah,
for sure.
I know. It definitely was eye-opening, definitely let me see a lot of the world. So I can't have any regrets, basically. But so I've always had an inclination to want to help people. Even as a 6-year-old, when anyone asked me what I wanted to do, it was always ambulance driver. Don't ask me why. It's like, so I've always had this inclination to want to help people deep down. And to briefly talk about my past, there was lots of trauma in my life. We might go into that later on. But in a nutshell, I ended up going for therapy through to do with different aspects of my life. And she suggested, have you ever thought about becoming a coach or a therapist? I'm like, well, I thought about it a lot. And this was like probably 10 years ago, like early 30s. I'm thinking, I have thought about it. So I started studying, and I studied coaching first. And then I thought, I need to look into this hypnosis malarkey. I wonder what it is. So I started studying hypnosis. Did my qualifications there first, and then I'm sure we'll get into this later on, but then things just started to expand, because in this work you start going down rabbit holes. And,
very much so.
Yeah, and it goes deeper and deeper. So that's sort of how I got started. That is a journey, the very brief journey towards what happened and why I decided to take the plunge.
Okay, was there a specific trigger then? Apart from the therapist's words, which you've already alluded to.
Yeah, well, the trigger was redundancy. I was in a full-time role for years after being doing the band work and travelling. I had kids and wanted to settle down, and I worked full-time for many years. I worked as a sales manager, and I just remember sitting in the office thinking, am I going to die in this office when I'm 75? Is there more to this world? Is there more to this life? I'm not aligned with my passion, which is a big part of my work now. And funnily enough, it just fell, serendipity or whatever it may be, that I got made redundant. I thought, right, I've got to make the jump because something's telling me to do something with it. So I guess that was the trigger point, as well as the therapist telling me, you're very empathic, you're a good listener. Have you ever thought about this kind of role? Because she saw something in me that I obviously hadn't seen in myself, which is, again, a big thing in therapy, as we know.
Yes, isn't it? So that's a really nice way of the universe saying to you, that's enough of that. It's served its purpose.
Yeah.
It's paid the bills, helped you to bring up your kids.
Yeah.
But now you need to focus on you.
Yes.
And this desire that you had from being little.
Yes.
To help other people.
Yeah, it did. And if I'm totally honest, I struggled with mental health. I struggled with illness through mental health affecting my body through creating illness, sorry. Mm-hmm. And if I'm totally honest, I thought one of the ways to heal myself fully, as much as we can do, is to help other people and mirror that effect back onto me. Not just for me, but like I was told that's a good way of doing it. That's a good way of looking at it, that the more you can help others, the more you're going to help yourself. And I think I sort of went down that role of that kind of mindset as I went along.
Yeah, I think a lot of people that go into healing, no matter what modality,
yes,
have an element of that there.
Yeah.
It's just whether they're brave enough to admit to it or not, like you've just been.
Yeah, 100%. And I think I struggled with a lot of ideas because when I was in my logical side of my brain and sales and all that rubbish that I hate, even now I have to sell stuff, I have to sell products, but I hate it. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm not that kind of, I know we need to, it's a business, but I'm not that kind of person either. Sales never sat right with me. It wasn't aligned. It wasn't something that I wanted to do. And I think that helping other people helped me move forward as a person. I needed to make a transformation. I knew I needed to make a transformation in my life. And I was so ill growing up. I was struggled for so long. I knew I had to change everything in my life. So,
do you want to say any more about that? Because you've mentioned it a couple of times.
I think I've mentioned it because it's massively relates to what I do now, I guess. And I think life threw me hundreds and hundreds of lessons the hard way. And it sounds like I'm being a bit over the top or exaggerating, but I don't feel like it is. I think back in the day, I had a very angry father. And it's hard to talk about my parents because we've got a great relationship, now. But back when you're a child and you see your dad's like really angry at other people, not in an abusive way, I got that out there now, but it's terrifying to a child. And I became a massive introvert. You'd never find me doing anything like this, speaking on a stage. Massive introvert, full of anxiety. I developed anorexia in my teens. I wouldn't say boo to a goose. I was bullied heavily through school. The whole shebang.
That's an awful lot of trauma.
It is. And I look back now thinking, grateful, because I had to go through it to discover what I know now. And I feel like I know a good amount of knowledge now. One, through the studying that I've done, because I've always been a bit of a nerd, like in terms of like studying and learning and...
A course junkie.
No. Well, yeah, yes and no. I wanted to avoid that. I did my qualifications and then I just studied myself. Because
brilliant. It's
never ending cycle, isn't it? Knowledge is never ending. And I knew that no one was going to come and save me. I had the most horrendous relationships with partners. cycle after cycle after cycle after cycle. The same cycles. Narcissistic abuse was heavily predominant that I faced. And it was so easy to blame the other person. And it got to like 10, 15 years ago and I thought, right, what's the common denominator here? And I've done so much soul searching in my life. It's mind-blowing to me. And I thought, right, why is it that I'm being cheated on and they were being unfaithful to me? But it was the same pattern over and over and over again. It can't be them because not everyone can be doing the same thing. So it's got to be me. So that led me down the whole rabbit hole of nice guy syndrome, self-worth issues, how we treat ourselves, how we value ourselves, our boundaries, which again, because I had to learn about them, I now can not so much teach other people, because in healing and change work, I believe that everything is within us already. Everything's inside of us, and I don't heal anybody. That's the first thing I'll tell anybody who comes to see me. Or don't do so much healing work nowadays, but when I first started, that was my trauma and healing. The first thing I'll say, I don't do any healing. You know, this isn't some magical process. This is, and that's not against anybody who does, healing, but I'm of a certain mind frame. I open up the door, open up their vision through placebo, through hypnosis, to what is actually possible in their life. And as their perception changes about who they are as a person, who they can be as a person, their body starts to change, the mindset starts to change, and then the actions that they take start to change. I've gone off on a bit of a tangent there, but hope that makes sense.
No, it does. And I think it's very relevant to your story. To me, it didn't sound too tangential.
Yes.
If that's even the right way to say the word.
Yeah.
And I just want to chip in there that when I came to you seeking help, just not long after my brother had passed, you were wonderful.
Thank
and
you.
You may not feel that you healed me, but it's the person's perception, the receiver's perception, isn't it?
Absolutely, 100%.
And yeah, you certainly helped me on my journey.
Amazing.
And it's a multifaceted journey for everybody in their life, isn't it? We've all come with different baggage and experiences, whatever term you want to use, that makes us who we are sitting here right now.
Yeah.
Nobody's experience is irrelevant.
No.
It's all relevant.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And I guess, I know, I just triggered a thought there when you said about what were triggers through life. And there were a couple of other triggers, but obviously I've talked about the main ones. But like, I've discovered the power of suggestion like in my teens, and the power of how trauma holds in the body. And one example that just sprang to mind is I was, like I said, bullied really badly at school. And one day I took a massive beating, and it is what it is, kind of thing, But I thought my face was literally rearranged. And back in the day, you got home and my dad was like, oh, you'll be right. In the morning, everything will be fine. So there was no hospital or anything like that back then. And my face had just changed shape completely. And I was convinced I'd got internal damage because my face was out here. And I'd got eye socket pain there. And then 20 years later, whenever I became frightened, stressed, anxious, I got a pain here. And this was before I knew anything about this work. And then as I started to research and learn, I'm thinking, where's this pain coming from? Why does it always come when I'm stressed, frightened, anxious? And I sat with myself and meditated, did some self-hypnosis, and it took me straight back to that moment. Because I never actually resolved with myself what happened. And as I was changing it internally, I felt the pain. Honestly, it's mind-blowing.
I'm going to say that's really quite something.
Yeah, I felt the pain draining from my face. I'm thinking, I need to do more of this stuff. the body holds a score. The body keeps a score. Bessel van der Kolk, I think it is a game changer in trauma. And I'd heard of the work before I read his book anyway, about how we now believe that trauma holds in the body. But I've had so many experiences of it with clients and myself, physically seeing the changes in people. Because as I mentioned earlier on, before we went on air, my work started in hypnosis, hypnotherapy, predominantly. And it started spreading out. And a lot of it is now about intuitive coaching as well, where we're just having a conversation. But if you listen really carefully, and I guess, is it a skill? Possibly. Do you have to be empathic? Possibly. I don't know. But you will tell me what's wrong with you through your subconscious language, what you have no idea what you're saying. And you might walk in, when I used to do like more of the trauma work, and say, I need help, because I used to deal with pain a lot and autoimmune diseases when I first started out. And you'd have a pain in your shoulder and you wanted help with the pain to reduce it down. And you come in and say something like, an easier one, I feel like I've got the weight of the world on my shoulders. Yeah. And it's obviously a direct link, but then they get deeper and deeper. And one example, what always springs to mind when I talk about this is, let's call her Sharon. Obviously, I don't talk about clients personally, but let's call her Sharon. And back then when I was doing the pain work, someone contacted me and she said, I've been paralysed down one half of my body for about a year now. I'm like, right. I'm thinking, God, how am I going to help this woman? You know, like, I can't deal with paralysis. Yeah. I said, okay, so what's the problem? And she says, well, nobody knows. I'm like, okay. She says, I've been for scans, I've been for CT scans, and they think it's psychosomatic. I'm like, oh, this is interesting. You know, I said, well, I've no idea if I can help you. Let's have a go. And this was the very first time that I learned about organ language and the body talks to us from our organs. And I didn't learn about it. I just discovered it myself. You know, like I was reading about it. And she sat down, it was on Zoom. And she noticed it started where, I just can't remember exactly because it was like five years ago. And one arm had started to get a bit numb. And then she sat all day at a desk, and then it started to travel all the way down her body. And it wasn't completely paralysed. She wasn't like in a wheelchair, but she got no feeling. And it was like movement was difficult. And I said to her, my first words were, where did it start? It's because it'd been like that a year, not been like that all her life, and there was no obvious reason. She went, so she could see her think about it for a while, and she went, I said, what happened specifically in the days, weeks, months leading up to that event? Because it's got to be symbolic for you. You know, you know when something's happening to your body, you sort of remember a time period. Absolutely. And she's like, oh, well, my cat died. I'm like, yeah, okay. I said, that's sort of irrelevant. I think it's irrelevant. What else? Oh, she says, well, my abusive partner, I'm like, oh, here we go, upped and left overnight. And it was a shock to the system. I'm like, boom.
Yes.
There you are. So she'd internalized this metaphorical shock to a system, and the system had basically started shutting down because she didn't know how to handle. Yeah, no, I'm like, that's when it hit me. The power of the work. I'm like, holy mother of, I'm not going to swear, holy mother of God. Like, you know, because you can't act surprised, you know, in these sessions, but my jaw must have hit the floor because she just told me what was wrong with her.
Yes, she did.
And we did a bit of work together, and she couldn't afford, she couldn't afford to keep working with me long term. So we did the best we can, and it started to unravel because we started to work on that moment and that abuse. Wonderful. Yeah. Fascinating. Don't do that work anymore. If someone close to me comes and asks for help, of course, but that's not what I push nowadays. But yeah.
That's an incredible story.
Oh, honestly, I've got hundreds of them.
Yeah.
In different ways.
Have you written a book yet?
I started a book in 2017. Started it again in 2018. No, it's halfway there. But you know, when time passes and you think, no, I'm talking about the wrong part of my life. I need to talk about this now because something else has happened. So it's about, no, the best time to write it, I think, and getting the time.
Yeah, it just sounds to me like you'd have loads of ammunition for chapters there.
Honestly,
you know?
Yeah. But I think the fascinating thing about the work is that no person is ever the same. But the interesting thing is, all the problems are the same at a subconscious level, but each person presents differently, feels differently, perceives differently. And I think the more I've learned, the more I've dove deep into the subjects, ultimately, everything boils down to I'm not enough. And there's been hundreds of studies done on the subject. The world's greatest therapists will all say the same thing. Every celebrity client I've had, every Hollywood client I've had, it all boils down to I'm not enough. Mm. But that one sentence can create illness in the body.
Which it did in you. You've experienced that yourself.
Yeah. Can create financial blocks, which is a lot of work that I do now. Creates self-sabotage. Creates relationship problems, relationship cycles, going round and round again until they're broken. Fascinating.
So did your physical ailments heal as you started to heal your mind, your subconscious?
Yes. I think when I started to I used to have panic attacks every day for 10 years. Oh, wow. I was in a world of anxiety and never knew it. I just thought it was normal. I thought, maybe not normal. This is what I'm going to be. This is who I'm going to be.
You accepted that as that was you.
And it's really hard to describe now because I don't feel it as much. Well, I barely feel it at all, if I'm honest now. But back in the day, it's like, how am I going to get through today?
How awful.
I felt sick to the stomach. It was it's like my stomach was just producing this nauseating feeling constantly, every single day of my life. And it's just like, what do I do? And so, I'm just going to tangent here. But I remember seeing a psychologist when I was 14 because the anxiety started when I was 13, I think. And I think this is the reason what pushed me into, I don't badmouth therapies, but some therapies I don't quite follow or believe in more than others.
It's fair enough. And some aren't appropriate, are they, for certain conditions?
Yeah. And I saw this lady who my mum found, and she lived in a beautiful house, beautiful area, one of the top psychologists in Sheffield. And I just remember, she said to me, what you need to try and do, because I said, I've got all these emotions, I don't know what to do with them, and I've got all this anxiety. And she says, what you need to try and do is push them down, and we're going to lock the key and lock them away. And at the time, I didn't think anything of it. Now, it's possibly the worst thing anybody could have ever said to me. Like, let's repress your emotions even further and lock them inside you. I'm like, what? Yeah. And as I've learnt more and as I study more and as I know more now, I can't believe that was what I was told. So I'm like, nope, I'm not going to follow the psychological route for my own reasons. The subconscious route, I believe, is where it's at. Because talking to our listeners, because I know you know all this stuff of being a hypnotherapist yourself, but your subconscious controls everything. It does. Like literally everything in your life, your heartbeat, your breathing rate, all the way down to your habits, patterns, and so on. So it's theorized that it controls 95% of our life. I would say, from my own experience, it controls 99%. Probably nearly all of it. And we've got this 1% consciousness. What am I going to have for tea tonight? What am I going to do tomorrow? Just trying to think that it makes decisions when it doesn't. And I thought, well, hold on a minute. If the subconscious mind controls 99% of our life, why would every therapist not want to deal with that? Like, it didn't make sense to me. Did not make sense to me. Because I've known people who've gone to talking therapy for 5, 6, 7 years.
And got nowhere.
Yeah. And again, that therapy will work for some people. Absolutely no problem with it whatsoever. Whoever wants to use it, amazing. And I hope it helps them. But what I was seeing was people weren't changing. So every therapy has one core objective. And this came to me a few years ago. All we are doing is changing perception of how somebody looks at something. That is what therapy is. Once we change it, the way we look at something, we cannot unchange it. We cannot unsee something that we've seen. So it's like, I'm thinking, well, why would not everyone not want to just go straight to the subconscious? Because talking therapy, the idea is, I'm guessing, again, I'm not conversed in the style, they're trying to get deeper and deeper and deeper to the subconscious. And my logical thinking is, well, just go there in the first place, and deal with it there. Why spend 6 years, 5, 4, 3, 2, however long people go for, trying to get in there when we can just bypass it and go in?
Seems logical to me.
Yeah. Just like... And that's that's the love story I've got with the subconscious, I guess, and hypnosis. And the reason, if I'm honest, again, the reason why I expanded was I didn't want to be known as the hypnotherapist. Because there's a lot of education to be done around hypnosis. And I didn't have the time, or the inclination, or the energy for it. And lots of people saying it's too dangerous, then. Or is it like a stage? Is it like what happens on stage? Or can I get locked inside? Or all these misconceptions over the years of hypnosis. And I'm like, I ain't got time for it. I want to help people. I ain't got time to... And don't get me wrong, I'll explain to anybody, but I wasn't interested in that side of it. I just wanted to help people. And calling myself a hypnotherapist, it was just... I was becoming stuck. So then I started calling myself... I don't know what I call myself nowadays, if I'm totally honest. A transformation coach. But then coaches are tarred with the same kind of brush as well.
It can be, can't it?
Yeah. I studied NLP, EFT, coaching. That was the first one. Following my intuition. So what else did I do? And then I started combining like spirituality, energetics. Because what I found was I needed to be able to, what's the word? Be fluent with what people needed, not what I wanted to give them. So if someone comes along, I can only give them hypnotherapy. It's like, well, that's good, yeah. But what happens if they want to talk and they want to be shown some patterns? And I work with the speech patterns and I work with what they're telling me and I reflecting back to them. Have you thought about this? Have you looked at that? Or what if they want to do it a completely different way and want to do mental exercises? They're scared of hypnosis. So then I started to devise. So I took lots of NLP techniques. I took lots of hypnosis techniques and tweaked them, if I'm honest.
Make them yours.
Yeah. And some of it was I guess for a bit of a legacy. I'd like to be known for what I do because I can help more and more people. And some of it was, I remember my coach once saying, well, when you're telling people you're a hypnotherapist, people jump on Google and say, you can find 90 in your area being able to undercut your price. So what if you're offering coaching services where you are using your own unique mechanisms, and if people want to work with you, then they work with you, but they can't jump on and get 300 other prices within a half an hour radius of you.
Because what you're offering is unique.
Yeah, basically. And that's a path I took. And so at the moment, I still do all the same work, but I've always loved working with business owners. That's my ultimate passion. And you'll find a lot of people doing hypnosis work with weight loss, stop smoking, maybe bad habits. Amazing. Never my bag, really. Just not interested in it. What I wanted to work with was empowerment, peace, passion, love, and all the benefits in life, not just focusing on all the pain.
Interesting. So a complete...
Yeah, reversal of it.
Different side of the same coin.
Yes. And don't get me wrong, I do talk about pain because some people need to know that they are struggling. Some people just don't realise it. But I want to help entrepreneurs unleash their potential. That is my main focus nowadays. Like I ultimately had to unleash mine. Like, I cannot believe from the 18-year-old boy who was scared of his own shadow, literally, like weighed 6.5 stone, who couldn't talk to anybody, to the guy who sat here now, who goes around public speaking on the keynote subjects. It's like not even the same person. But I guess it's not the same person as well, because we're all growing and we're all evolving. And that's what I want. Basically, that's what I want to give to others. The opportunity, if they wish, to change from where they are now. And so that obviously can involve a lot of trauma work, because we're all held back by the same things in different ways.
Of course.
We cannot move forwards until we unhook the hooks that are holding us back.
That makes perfect sense. I like that analogy. I can see it physically,
yes,
hooking people in the past, and you've got to heal from that.
Yes. And it is healing, but some people don't want to hear that.
True.
Some entrepreneurs like, there's nothing wrong with me. So we have to do it in a way where I work with a free-form kind of hypnosis where I ask, well, we do lots of things, but in one part, I ask the subconscious mind to show the person their problem in metaphor, because the brain works in metaphors, the brain works in colours and algorithms. And I ask it, show me a metaphor. And I'll say to the person, you might understand it, and you might see this random thing, you've got no idea what it means. So sometimes people say, yeah, and we'll talk about it, and then I'll say, could it be this? Could it be that? Don't listen to what I'm saying to you, just take it on board. Don't think for a second it's got to be, because I'm not putting anything into your mind as such. I don't want to put anything into your mind. Or they'll tell me what they think it is. Sometimes, a week later, the message will be saying, I know exactly what it is. So these hooks show up in different ways, but it doesn't have to be completely in a therapeutic setting, is what I'm trying to say. We don't have to go back and talk about their childhood. No talking involved. All techniques what involve no talking, no, and this was another thing with a lot of therapy. Some forms of therapy that I've had firsthand, but close friends have gone to, where they've been thrown back into the moment. And the only analogy I can give is that they've had to put the hand on the burner constantly until it no longer hurts. And I'm thinking, there's got to be a better way than that. There's got to be a better way than that. So, no talking. We can talk. I'm not saying they've got to be mute. But no being dumped into the middle of a time where we were 3 years old and there was lots of abuse going off, because who wants to be re-traumatized?
Absolutely. So
I wanted to find ways. The style of hypnosis that I studied was, it's called Elmanian, Dave Elman, and he was in out. He was very direct to all his stage demonstrations for like doctors and the medics was like instantaneous. There was no talking, lulling into trances. It's just like, you're in, you're out. In space of like 10, 15 minutes. I loved it. I'm thinking, why do we need to drag our feet? Why do we need to get clients to pay for months and months and months and months when we can? I'm not saying everyone's sorted in 10 minutes, by the way, but the faster we can get in and out, do the work, and I'm going to jump slightly, but I think when we do the work, the brain has to recalibrate. So say we take a big trauma out of our lives and we reframe the trauma. What happens is the trauma's still there, the image is still there, but we remove the emotion. So we can't say, right, I'm going to delete that memory, you're never going to remember it again. It's impossible. No one can do that.
It's not realistic, is it?
No. What we can say is, so one day you're going to see that image and you're going to think, oh yeah, that happened. You're not going to be thinking, oh, that happened and it makes me feel, I've got that anxiety building up inside my body every time I think about it. Because we reframe the moment, take the emotion away, and what the brain does, it has a bit of a fit. It's like, oh God, where's that emotion gone? I'm searching for it because our brain is constantly searching back as reference points in our past. So whenever we experience something new, our brain's jumping back thinking, have I been in this moment before? Should I be scared? Should I be happy? Should I be excited? And it's searching back for these moments, these chains.
It's a way of it helping us to understand the world around us, isn't it?
Yes.
And that's what it's seeking for all the time.
Pattern seeking recognition system. It's, the more I think about it, it's so close to a computer that I think one day they'll be sort of indistinguishable. Sounds a bit weird and random, but we're running our hard drive. Our subconscious mind is a hard drive, what runs software, which has been programmed into us from the first 7 years of life. And we run on these programs in loops like I did, like everybody, one of my clients does. We stay in the loop until it's updated. And we run a anti-frag or a diagnostic or whatever we want to call it.
Update the drivers.
Yeah. Computer says no. And the brain has a little meltdown. It's like, I don't know what to do. It's gone. This thing what was there is no longer there. What do we do? So what happens is, from the moment of the trauma, everything what came after it, up to the present day, has got no reference point. So it starts to collapse. And that might take 10 minutes. It might take 10 weeks. It might take 6 months. And it's like a snow globe. We'll rattle the brain in the session, metaphorically speaking. And as the brain settles, it settles in new patterns.
That makes sense.
And the reason why I talk about not healing other people is I open the gateway for people to see. It sounds a bit spiritual.
No, I like that because it's not as constricting.
No.
The use of the word healing is very constricting, isn't it? It pushes you down a certain thought process.
Yeah.
But opening the doors anywhere.
Of course, and I definitely don't think I heal myself. I think somebody opened the door and said to me, you can help others. And then that thought process led to me helping others, which slowly started to help me. And I don't think I've ever told anyone this, but you're the person. So I still struggle nowadays. I get seasonal affective disorder, and I was diagnosed a few years ago with cognitive OCD, which was started when I was 13. And I never, ever, ever knew what it was, never understood it. And with it being OCD, will it ever be cured? The judge is out, because some people will say you can't cure OCD. Some people will say I've got the best cure in the world for OCD. And there's never been any conclusive studies for OCD. So it's not like I sit there scrubbing floors or anything like that. It's all in my mind. And because I'm a deep thinker, because I'm a bit of a nerd and a constant learner, I can quite easily burn out, which I've had to be very careful, over the years. And again, I've just lost my train of thought where I was going with that.
Which is a shame, because that's fascinating. I mean, when you're talking, what it made me think of was cognitive OCD,
yes,
linked with the anxiety you'd experienced through your earlier years.
Yes.
I thought, is there an actual link there? Is that where you're going with that?
100%. 100%. So my brain has always worked a different way. And then I've thought to myself, as I've gotten more knowledge, I'm thinking, everyone's brain works a different way. No brain will work the same. Everyone's perception of life is slightly different. So what's normal, what's not? My girlfriend is highly ADHD. She struggles really bad. And I've seen a lot of people with ADHD, and she's probably the worst person that I've seen with it. And she struggled for years. And then I think to myself, do I have ADHD? Would that explain the way my brain works? And then, so something else that I've not touched upon, which I think is relevant though, is so my son was born with Asperger's. He was diagnosed around 3 years old. And that's been interesting, seeing him grow up and the way he's grown up and the way his thought process has been. High functioning autism. So it just affects him in very specific ways. And then I've got cousins who are Asperger's. And I'm not sure if Dad's going to listen to this or not. I'm convinced my dad has Asperger's. And I believe that the root of his anger was deep frustration that he cannot convey to the world because he doesn't know how to. So I guess in my work, I've become a sort of a pattern acknowledger or pattern seeker. And I start to see patterns in people. This is where the intuition process comes in, I guess. And I start to see patterns in people. And I go off and like this deeper thinking. What is it? I'm not saying I'm always right by any means, but it makes logical sense to me. And I do believe that I might be Asperger's myself, which would then explain some of my thought processes and the kind of OCD thought process because of the fixed thinking. And then I remember that I was called Aspie Boy growing up in school for years. No idea what it meant back then. I used to laugh at them. Then I used to work in a band, and one of the band members called me a Asperger kid or something like that. I'm like, why is everyone calling me that? And then, when you're just not really interested, just like, whatever kind of thing. And then I'm thinking, maybe so. I've got to the point thinking, so what if I am? I'm not bothered about a diagnosis, but it makes more sense to me,
Yeah, some people really like to have a diagnosis for any kind of, Asperger's, autism, ADHD, ADD. It helps them to clarify and perhaps come to a workable understanding in day-to-day life for them of why they do what they do. But others, like yourself, don't really care. They are what they are. And I'm not saying there's right or wrong in either of them. I think it's a totally individual choice.
100%, 100%. And obviously, as working as a doctor, you've probably seen there's been a rush of ADHD over the past 2 years. And I'm going to say something very contentious now.
Oh, go for it. We love a bit of contention.
And it didn't go well last time I put it on Facebook, but I've got a firm belief that 99% of ADHD comes from trauma. My absolute firm belief. And I put this on Facebook a couple of months ago, and I had some vicious comments, like really vicious. I've had no trauma in my life. How do you know what I suffer with? Well, fair enough, each to their own. But trauma comes in many forms. This doesn't mean that you were beaten up as a child. It doesn't mean that you formed any kind of abuse. It's the way that you process the world. And even if your brain is wired differently, because we now live in a different world where there's technology all the time, and our children are getting dopamine rushes off tablets and phones, and their brain cannot comprehend this dopamine rush, and it cycles and it cycles and it cycles until the brain starts to rewire itself. Has anyone actually considered that? I'm not saying that's the only cause, obviously, but like, I'm a firm believer that as we biologically change and evolve, a lot more people are susceptible to environmental stimuli, environmental issues.
Well, our mutual friend, Winford Dorr.
Yes.
Who's done an awful lot of study on neuroscience and neurology and how that relates to neurological/mental illnesses.
Yep.
And his research leads him to state that trauma is actually defined as any state that the brain cannot find a resolution to or an answer to.
100%. A total. And I had this theory. So I had this theory a while ago. I've had a lot of theories. I've worked with a lot of one-to-one clients, and you just start to see the same patterns over and over again. So I've developed a lot of theories. And then I read Winford's work. I'm like, yeah, it's obvious. Not that his work's obvious. It was obvious to me. Why did no one else get it? Apart from Winford. And like he talks about the cerebellum being underdeveloped. And it's like, because he did a bit of work with my son, and he talked about, he's not for 1 second saying he can cure Asperger's, but he said, has there been any trauma? I'm like, God, there's been shed loads of trauma. Like my son was born with, they called it hemiplegia, where he was paralysed down one half of the body at birth. And he had years of physio, and over time, he started to come back. The movement came back, and he's perfectly normal now. But he said, there's a chance, because back when my ex-wife was pregnant, she was convinced that Carson, my son, had a seizure in the womb. She felt something really, really disturbing. They were like really bad shaking. She was convinced that he'd had a seizure, and when he was born, they did loads of tests. They couldn't figure out why he was like he was, and like Winford said, it would make perfect sense. And then it's affected his cerebellum and how it develops, and his balance and his body and his reaction to the world.
Totally. Which
then led me down the route of epigenetics.
Ooh, there's a big topic.
Oh,
juicy.
Wow. Massive fan. And some people are still of the mindset that it's all spiritual woo, and I'm like, it was developed by a scientist, a stem cell scientist. You couldn't get any less woo-woo than if you tried.
And I have to coexist with both of those within me.
Absolutely. And I feel the pain, because I'm no medical background whatsoever, but I feel the pain because epigenetics goes off the principle that we have a genetic blueprint, but how that blueprint is activated is by our environment. And people will say, oh yeah, we've got genes. This is what controls us and this is how it works. But we now know that's not the case. It's been shown to be not the case over and over again. Our genes are activated in certain patterns by our stimuli, external stimuli. Well, that was just like game changer for me. You know, like, again, took me down the rabbit hole of healing, spirituality. And I don't know why, but I just thought, if everything that we're learning is wrong, and education is a completely another subject, but, you know, like, if everything we're being taught in school is wrong about the atom, about, maybe it's not quite wrong, but it's not accurate by any stretch of the imagination, about the atom and chemistry, and I'm like, what's actually right? You know, and there's all these subjects where you go deeper into them and it's not some kind of conspiracy. It's just, have we been taught wrong for a reason, or is it just we've gone down the wrong path?
That's an interesting question that a lot of my friends have been teachers. And I say have been because only some of them still are. And they have said to me that what we teach is not exactly the truth, because not that we're deliberately lying to people, but to teach the totality of it would just be too much. And so we have to pare it down and teach the bare bones, which in effect isn't the truth. And yes, that appears that I've contradicted myself there, but hopefully you get what I'm saying.
Absolutely, absolutely. I once I've spoken to a few, you know, because I like to get medical opinions on things. You know, my theories, but like, I don't pull these theories out of thin air. I study data from my clients. I think I've worked with over 250 one-to-one clients, and that's a lot of data to pull from, as in patterns, how people act. And I spoke to 2 or 3 consultant psychiatrists. Fascinating, because I'm there thinking they're going to go down the medical route on me and they're going to close me off. No, on trauma, on, and like, they were fascinated by my work. I'm thinking, shouldn't it be the other way around? You know? And the more I questioned, the more worrying it became. I remember one of them saying, yeah, the mind-body connection, which is, again, I love the subject. We had like a 15-minute lecture on it when I was in med school, and that was it. I'm like, really? Like, one of the most important health connections you could ever imagine, and you had a 15-minute lecture on it. She said, I've got no recollection of it whatsoever. And obviously she's had to study it over and over again. But like, a consultant psychiatrist who has done the medical degree and then studied the mind to an extent, and then medicine. I'm guessing, I don't know the full route, if I'm honest. But I'm like, I thought I was coming on this call to get like insights off you. And they were just fascinated with the work. And at the time I was working with autoimmune diseases and IBS. And like, how I was removing pain from people with IBS. Because hypnosis has a direct effect on the gut. And they just couldn't get their head around it. I'm like, yeah, did you not know this?
Yeah.
I'm like, I was leaving the call feeling like flabbergasted. And like the signals from the brain to the, from the brain to the gut and the gut to the brain, how powerful they are in terms of psychology, mindset. Gut is the second brain, how powerful it is in terms of illness. And they understood it to an extent, but they never really thought about it. And she said it's only now, over this past couple of years, that it's been accepted into the medical world anyway, half accepted into the medical world.
I was going to say half accepted.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
It's frightening, absolutely frightening.
Mm-hmm. There's so much more needs to happen. And that is part of the mission of this podcast, that you have inadvertently just hit the nail right on the head. And that is about making sure that these worlds meet.
Yes.
And work harmoniously. for the common goal, which is to help people.
No, 100%.
I mean, come on,
Yeah.
big world out there. Let's just do it. Let's stop sticking our own heads up our own backsides and only looking at our tiny little part.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's look out and let's help people.
It's got to be difficult when you go to see the GP with anxiety. They can't spend half an hour saying, how were things growing up? What's your lifestyle like? What are your triggers? They haven't got the time.
No, they haven't.
Quick, 2 questions. Here's some pills. Fair enough. Is that the pharmaceutical industry's problem? Causing, who knows? That's
There's another big subject.
So it's difficult. I understand how difficult it is. Yeah. But although I don't work specifically with IBS, with chronic pain anymore, my work right now is removing self-sabotage, procrastination, limiting beliefs to make more money, unleash your potential and find your purpose. But all that work involves everything we've talked about so far. Yeah. Because a lot of it is trauma-based. A lot of it is limited from our childhood beliefs and stories that we've told ourselves. So it encompasses all of it, but I just don't specifically focus. I'm not out there telling people how I deal with IBS.
Yeah, because like you said earlier, people like big business CEOs are not going to engage with that, are they?
No, not interested.
I mean, that again is generalising. Some of them maybe are very woo, and would consider this to be perfectly wonderful and acceptable, but others are going to be a bit more straight down the line and need to see things in their own perception of what it is.
I struggled with it, if I'm honest. I had a really interesting conversation with I can't remember if it was a CEO, but it was a business owner. And it was a former business owner. And she contacted me out of the blue. And the conversation turned really weird because she told me about all these stomach pains and she'd been to the doctors and they weren't sure if it was IBD or IBS. And I said, well, I can definitely help you to the level, I don't know. Let's see what happens. I can definitely take the pain down for you and we can start to calm your stomach down through hypnotic techniques. And I can't remember if she was on long-term sick or she'd been made redundant. But the conversation turned weird because she said to me, if you make me better, I'll no longer get my benefits. And I'm like, that moment hit me like a ton of bricks. People are stuck to their identity. And people who are unwell, sometimes, obviously this isn't generalization, don't want to be better because of the validation, the attention, the idea of, I have this scenario. Some people are like that, unfortunately. This is just how it is. And I thought, this is not for me. Mm-hmm. So when I first started out, I went into the hypnosis world thinking, I want to try a bit of everything. I don't know what I like. And that's what I did. So that's why I dealt with so many different things.
Enough, yeah.
And then I've like niched down, over time. And I moved away quite fast from certain things because we've got the NHS and people were saying, well, why would I pay you when I've got the NHS? I'm like, fair answer. But the NHS don't know about this stuff or they might know about it or they're not willing to encompass it.
Yeah, they don't provide it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've had some very, very strange conversations over the years.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So going forward then, you've changed tack to something that suits you.
Yes.
You have a veritable, wonderful potential pot of people out there that you can help with the unique skill set that you've built up over the years.
Yes.
By sampling things, getting rid of what doesn't feel good to you, because if it doesn't feel good to you, you can't give the best of you.
100%.
That's what I believe.
Yeah.
So if your ideal client is out there now, what is the one final thing that you would like to say to affirm to them that they should get in touch with you right now because you can help?
I guess a couple of things spring to mind. One is the fact that you can change. You've been doing, from my data, from my research, the same things over and over again. You've been reading the books. You might have become a course junkie. You've been saying to me, I'll sort it out myself. Yet, here we are 5 years later, and you're still doing the same things over and over again. Can I help you? I hope I can. But it's worth a conversation, 100%. And just as a addendum, I guess, my work, I don't talk about it a lot because, again, it can push some people away. It does turn quite spiritual to an extent because I'm all about aligning people. And as I've aligned with my work, when I'm helping people see their full potential, it aligns a spiritual alignment in them that they're capable of anything. And until they find that, or until they're shown that as a reflection of themselves, that's when they can start to change.
Wonderful. I love that. I think that's a perfect place to end it on because that feels like a really positive, glorious note. And that aligns with me. So I'd like to say a massive thank you to you, Chris. It's been an absolute joy.
Thank you very much. I absolutely loved it. What a beautiful studio.
Credits to Mark.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.